Hello there, fellow Earth citizens. My name is Kate and welcome to my channel. If you've bounced into this video, it's because you have an interest in an awakening story. If you're not familiar with what awakening is and you just happen to ding in here and you're clueless, let me help you out. Awakening, as far as spirituality is concerned, is kind of that matrix understanding. If you've seen the movie The Matrix, there's the premise that we are Earth citizens and we're just kind of in a fog. We're part of a machine. We're feeding and giving our energy, our life force to something else. And we're living this false life. And when we unplug and go neo with it, we've discovered that, yeah, bend the spoon, just bend the spoon, man. Make it bend, whatever it was that he said. It's about your mind. So the awakening story really has to do with, for me, my process, and for many people that identify with the Ascension process, spiritual evolution, their life path, esoteric studies, old ancient religions and knowledge, that kind of thing. That's the vein that I'm in. I do not align with any one particular doctrine or theology or any religion of any kind. Nothing. I'm not going to want to land anywhere and say, yes, I identify exclusively with this. Me personally, I find my best way of handling my awakening process and my spirituality and my growth and development and my higher consciousness and the evolution thereof is to leave it up to me that, yeah, I think I'll be the dot collector and I'll pick up the dots that I'm led to go and pick up, like, Pac-Man. Once I'm in the right frequency, the vibrational field of understanding where I'm going and get into the flow of synchronicity, then I'm like Pac-Man. I'm just, all I have to do is just keep following that little white dot, just keep eating those dots of information, and that's how I get through the maze or the matrix, or unplug the machine. But that's kind of how it works for me, is that once I can I get into and that groove and understand, okay, I'm in the flow, I'm in the highest vibration I can be in, then I'm going to dot collect after that, and I'll just keep course correcting as I'm hearing and I'm praying and I'm getting the downloads, the activations, etc. If some of that, all of that, none of that isn't making sense or not making sense, hang tight, because it's there's something here if you want to find something, and there's nothing here if you don't want to even look. That's your choice. And so I encourage you, if you're here so far, then please hang for another couple of minutes and let's just talk about what awakening is, and I'll tell you what it was for me. It was quite scary and quite painful, literally, and very awkward and emotionally just devastating and crazy. I mean, it was absolutely kooky, chaotic, and horrible. And yet I wouldn't trade my life today for what I went through, but I do not align. It's where I kind of separate out, is that I don't believe that every single one of those major adversities and roadblocks that I met with was absolutely necessary and crucial for me to go through in order to get where I got. And that's why I tell my story, is that I firmly believe the information, the intel that I get as a starseed, light worker, etc., as a person with some gifts in the clair department, I can hear things, I can see things with my third eye, I can know things intuitively and work as an empath, and really have a vibe and an understanding of things and premonitions and prophetic dreams sometimes. I mean, there's just a whole world out there of untapped potential as far as I'm concerned. And so me personally, I'm got kind of lost, so if I'm not making sense, I think I'll be able to pull it back in a minute, especially if I say, hey, divinity, help me out here, man. I went through that awakening, so don't leave me hanging here on broadcast that everybody can see that divinity doesn't works just fine. That I don't believe I had to be in any major catastrophic event that happened in my life. I don't believe those were pivotal and absolutely necessary, that they were dictated beforehand in a life plan. My personal story, I start out by just telling you that I've always been a person who is highly invested in equality and justice. I don't like to see the underdog or the little guy get stomped on. I certainly don't like to be the little guy, but I was, because I'm nerdy and awkward. I can blame it on autism, perhaps. I don't like to blame it on anything. I'm just me. I do seem to have some, particular problems with communication that are related to having this diagnosis. And so that's part of my struggle, is having to learn how to communicate in a different way, because I already am communicating with, outside sources out there differently, and I have trouble sometimes communicating with human beings as well. So that's been part of my struggle in understanding my process. But it started very much, from the time that I can remember. I've always been a humanitarian, and I've always been interested in healing and bringing, families together, friends together, resolution in the job place, whatever it is, man. I'm a skilled negotiator. I can do crisis intervention. I used to be a paramedic, and I was pretty good at it. Be able to go, yeah, let's not kill each other, all right? And even better, don't kill me, because I'm not involved in it. I'm just trying to help, But there's a way, right, to identify with those parts of ourselves that are very much loving, kind, fun, creative, etc. Most of us find it very easy because we've got constant input from around us, from insecure people who also aren't very healed or solid, that tell us that we're not a very good person. And so it's very conflicting, especially if we feel like we're special. We have a mission here, we got a special job, I got something I came here to do, man. And yet I don't know, I was told I was so horrible, and I'm pretty sure that I believe that now. And and then, oh my goodness, if you actually launch off and actually do something horrible, you're gonna have a hard day in confession, or you're gonna have a hard day on your floor whenever none of it makes sense, and perhaps you think you're losing your mind. That was me anyway, as I didn't come from a background in a faith that I could really purchase much but hollow understanding. And so as I was kind of going through my process 3 years ago, I knew coming into my 50th year was 2018. January 1 of 2018, that was my 50th year. I didn't turn 50 until springtime in May. However, the start of January 1st, I had been on tons of medication to help my mood, my mood lability, man. I was depressed, and I was overweight. I weighed upwards of over 300 pounds at one time, and then did lose some weight. I actually had gastric bypass surgery, and I now know exactly why. You need to lose some weight before you get that surgery there, cowboy, because we can't do that. I understand that, because I didn't have the solid foundation going into that I would keep up what they were expecting me to keep up with. So I didn't lose all of the weight that I am now. I was still quite heavy. I was about 250 pounds in that going into my 50th year, 2018 in January. I was praying. I was putting it out there. Look, I'm at my wit's end. I'm unhappy. I'm overweight. My health is failing. I feel miserable. I'm mean. I hate everybody. And I'm pretty sure that I hate whatever's around me that's supposed to be running this, because it's chaotic, it's crazy, and nobody's helping me. You're supposed to be. I was given God, divinity, my angel teams, whatever you believe in. I was given my version of that, quite the ass kicking of what are you doing? And if you exist, prove me now, man. I don't have time for, misunderstanding anymore. I have time only because I'm literally dying. My energy is waning down to the point that my gas factor is low. The give a shit factor. You're in trouble when your give a shit factor's down on 0. That's not far from just completely shutting down. You see a lot of vacant eyeballs walking around like that. And I knew I was there, but I knew for me personally, I had been on the edge of death. I've been on the edge of death quite a number of times. And I knew that for me, that was going to end up being that I wasn't going to make that I just knew that for my personal story, that I could feel my energy literally dwindling out of me, and that I wasn't going to make it if I didn't have a change. So January 1st, I just started. I was praying, and I naturally, literally just said, okay, well, I'm going to start and, take charge of this and start talking to the person who's prescribing these meds to me of what do they do, how do they interact, and, let's titrate down on this, and let me start seeing how much of this I can do on my own, anything that I can do on my own at home to help with stress relief and blah, 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 and mood lability. That's what I want to do. And so I talked to that doctor about it, and then released him, when he didn't really want to play all that nicely with me. Well, I don't know if you should get off all those meds. I don't know if if you should. Well, okay, well, thanks. I'll just go to my family doctor. Thanks. He's a lot more interested in working with me to be my own leader of discernment on what I think is best for my body. And at that time, I was very solid that this is poisoning me. I'm not suggesting anybody take meds or stop taking meds. Please talk to your practitioner, your medical care person. Please speak to that person, and do not take advice from anybody off of YouTube unless they're your doctor and they're giving you advice in a private video. I mean, because you need to be the leader of your own discernment. And even then, the leader of your own discernment is going to say, that doesn't seem quite right, and then move out from there. So I was very fortunate that I had that kind of solid understanding that I'm not giving up on this, and I'm not going to let you bully me into that, staying on this or that or whatever. So that was the first thing. And unfortunately, whenever we're going through these awakening processes, a lot of times we have a catalytic conversion kind of thing where there's a in twin flame, they call it soul shock, but there's just kind of, the soul shock of a different kind, whatever it is that kind of breaks open the whole shell and cracks everything. And it just, it's like a boil, a festering wound that just whoosh. For me, it absolutely was that. It was a volcano. I started having seizures that they called them pseudo seizures. However, there were times when I just couldn't breathe. I absolutely couldn't make my body do what I wanted it to do. And I would lie there twisting, convulsing, all kinds of stuff, and these terrible, horribly painful, I mean, it was awful, and I don't want to hang around in that energy very long remembering it, because it was painful and I didn't understand it. I was frightened. And suffocating, I've had a near death on the suffocation thing, a couple of them, and that's just, it's unpleasant, and it's traumatic, and I had enough trauma. And with the initial unfortunately, the initial onset of the seizure activity was because of a flashback of an incident that happened when I was a toddler, and I had no idea that had happened. I was aware of other abuse that happened in my life. I came from a life of trauma. I mean, that was how I was raised, unfortunately, and I was aware of that. It took me by surprise, knocked me back for a minute, and kicked my ass right on up and down the superhighway, and I was having the most violent responses in my body. I would just, have these crazy jerks, and I have neurological disorder anyway with autism, so I have, some body tics and, things that kind of, whatever occasionally, but I never had that level of intense, discharge of, I have got to, get rid of this. My body decided. My mind was not involved in that at all. That was not, my brain and my human control did not have any part in that. They were not invited to the party. My body was on her own time and her own dime. She was like, yeah, we're going to take care of this. And it was quite shocking. But worse was that doctors really didn't. Neurology was kind of looking like, okay, well, and I was really questioning myself, my sanity. The people around me were looking at me like I was crazy and telling me that, quite frankly. And like, I've just had some fairly disturbing information. Excuse me, throat chakra, disturbing information come up for me about, something that I'm pretty sure I need some help with trying to decipher this. And now my body's going into, left field with some twitchy witchy stuff. And I don't like twerking unless I want to be twerking. And the insta twerk while I'm driving is just dangerous. I'm not digging this. It was confusing. Doctors did not know what to say to me. I had people in an ER one time drop me right on the floor. Oh, you can stand up. You're fine. No, actually, I'm on the ground, and I'm laying there, being humiliated and being treated like I was crazy and stupid. And, I, as a paramedic, I used to think when I was with people that I was working with that were really rude and stuff, like, even if you consider them crazy and stupid, is there some population of the planet that you're allowed to just treat like shit? Is that part of EMS? Because if it is, I don't want to do this job anymore. It's not the standard issue EMS provider, treating people like that, or medicine. I know it's not the standard. I mean, I've had doctors that were absolutely phenomenal and were very professional. That's what I'm going to remember. But to then have to go home after being treated like family, friends, doctors, neurology, ER, whatever it was, they're just looking at me like, yeah, we're pretty sure you're just, nuts. And why don't you go back on those medications and go back to that doctor that you don't want to see anymore? I'm like, no, because it just happened. That awakening thing, it was very gradual, the process of coming to that point. But once it reached that point of having the flashback, it just, it was like, you know, the chariot cart in astrology is just like, and took off running at ludicrous fucking speed, if you know what I mean. There was nothing. 1444 just passed. Thank you very much. There wasn't anything I was going to do. But I went along because I'm like that. That's my basic personality, is I'm gonna stand up and fight you if I know it's wrong to do what you're making me an accomplice. You're asking me to be an accomplice. I'm not getting into, you know, assholery kind of stuff and joining you. If I know that you're getting ready to go knock over a liquor store, I'm gonna decline the invitation. You know, no thanks. But, excuse me. Oh, wow. Isn't that fun? I got myself lost. I get distracted sometimes. I forget entirely what I'm talking about. So hang on. We'll get back around to it. That the people in my life and the doctors start over. What's the worst thing that can happen is you can look into your phone and say, oh, no, people laugh. Oh, no. After I've twerked while I drove and, you know, nearly had an accident and been dropped on the floor and have some children, you'll have no humility left at all. Have a baby in a hospital and you'll never have any problems again, and have surgery. You'll never have any issues with, you know, feeling, okay, yeah, whatever, just let it all hang out, you know, because there's no shame in me left about being honest and being who I am. And so back to the Ascension story, though, is that, and this is part of it, when there are activations, sweating, you know, I found that I had mood swings that were just all over the place. Cry one minute, laugh hysterically the next, which goes with a whole bunch of mental health diagnoses that I was trying to get away from, you know, that, oh Lord. But I would have these hot flashes and then freeze. I had pinpricks, tingling in my feet that was so painful. Sometimes I wanted to chop my feet off. Itching, intense itching all over the place. Activating, you know, crown chakra and third eye. There would be some, you know, I got a major vein right there. But there would be some pulsing and some pain sometimes there. There would be some pain in my head at the crown sometimes. And interesting to note is that I used to have migraines. I mean, monster migraines that were so debilitating. I would vomit and just, you know, my pain tolerance is pretty high. I don't want to have to grow my pain tolerance though. And, you know, I'm good with not experiencing pain anymore, but I had migraines that were crushing, soul crushing, and I don't have them anymore. I haven't had a headache, a migraine in years, and I haven't had a headache in, you know, probably 2 or 3 years since I went through divorce, which was part of it. Unfortunately, when we wake up, when we go through our awakening and we're evolving, if people around us don't really want to go with us in our healing journey, which is awakening, there's no way to be awakened. In my experience, there's not an awakening process without healing, because that's what most people that are on the awakening journey or the spiritual journey of ascension, etc., they're very driven by a need to share their knowledge, their higher knowledge, with the fellow Earth citizens that they share space with. You know, whether it be right there in their home, their community, the state, the county, whatever, all the way out to whatever levels of spreading that information that they reach. We understand that we're humanitarian driven. We're here as healers. We want to offer what we know in order to better the planet, because that's our mission. You know, people that are joined up into the army, they know what they're about. They join the army because that's the job that they want to have. People that want to work in a school as a teacher, that's the job they want to have. So they already know. And I do believe that before, you know, incarnating here on Earth, that however that came to be, that's a little more private than I'm willing to share on YouTube just yet, or ever, I don't know. But the understanding that I know is that I agreed to work for a Galactic Federation Army kind of thing, the Universal Army, that, you know, not God, not Jesus, not Brahma, not any specific deity itself. It's all vibration. And the highest vibrational field is, you know, unconditional love. Unconditional love. And so, excuse me, I work for that organization, if you will, that structure, that being, that entity, that vibration. That's where I clock in every day. And I really try not to clock out ever, and don't take any breaks, because it's a great organization to work for. And that information was given to me that, hey, you are working for this organization, this is your job, and when you get there, sometimes when we work for the Army, we might be taken hostage, we might be taken, you know, POW, and we might suffer a bit in those POW POW camps, and some of us might have worse experiences than others, and some might not make it, they may perish, and some of us might, you know, deal with issues related to this as opposed to this, and so we all grow up, you know, in our little POW experiences, having whatever we have. There's no guarantee that just because you sign up for the Army that you're gonna make it through boot camp. You just don't get that guarantee. You got to do the work, and you got to graduate, and you don't graduate a freebie in God's Army or the Universal Army or whatever you would consider that. You don't get a free pass on that. There isn't one. You don't make the skills, then you don't make the rank, and you will be booted from the Army. And excuse me, likewise, you can continue to achieve success as a, you know, working for the Army, if you will. You can achieve rank by continuing to do your job, do it well, and understand the mission brief, and understand, you know, you're listening to your intel from here and paying attention to what's on the ground and assessing, how do I move through this and remember my goal as I'm, you know, here to do my job. I'm a soldier and I have a job to do. How can I do that while maintaining dignity and respect, and remembering and honoring my mission is to tell the truth and do as little harm with that as possible. You know, the idea of tell the truth and do no harm, just tell the truth, because sometimes the truth is going to bring harm. It hurts people's feelings to get butthurt for a minute. I do too. I mean, we have feelings, but really there isn't any in me left anymore, any more concern about hurting people's feelings, because I do understand that the truth sometimes hurts. And it sometimes can be very difficult for us to want to face some of the things that are unpleasant. And, you know, I thought I was facing everything. And I had no idea. When I had that recall, I went, oh my goodness, you know, what else is in there? What else is in there that I don't know? And it was, I mean, it was a mess. And I walked around like a giraffe. I couldn't get up off the floor sometimes. I was very weak. I couldn't see straight. I was dizzy, vomiting. I couldn't eat. Ate nothing but candy for like 3 straight weeks. I ate nothing but Starburst and Skittles. I mean, seriously, it was because I was answering that call. I just knew, just let all of this little glitch in the matrix stuff, you know, when you unplug, there might be some glitches as your body's, you know, powering down from that stuff and getting power from a different source. A new source is cleaner, less toxic, you know, and more conducive to my spiritual journey. And sometimes whenever, that's what I started to say. See, I didn't want to talk about it right there. 2211. Thank you very much. Sometimes when we're going through these processes, the people around us, they may not be ready to break open their tomb of icky, and they may not appreciate that, you know, you cracking open and having your brain break next to them might trigger them to feel like, I feel like mine might be next, because it probably is. You know, in my particular situation, I didn't want to be, you know, given any specific details. I just know that I went through divorce, and we already were vibrationally not compatible any longer. We really weren't, and I don't want to throw shade or be ugly. It's just, we already were not doing healthy relationship because we didn't know how to do that. We weren't taught that. We had no demonstration of that. And so both of us were coming at it with wrong understanding and a lot of hurt feelings now at this point, you know, that had to be let go. But the point is that as I was going through the process, January 1, think of it, 2018, by Christmas time, I was left. I had my seizures, and I wasn't nice. I'll be honest with you. I was having seizures. I felt out of control. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I mean, nothing was working right. Nothing made sense. And the people around me are looking at me like, what are you doing? And it looked, I guess, like I was faking it, which 2333 hacked me the hell right off. Like, what do you think this is? This is not a puppet show. Like, huh? You know, that I just like dancing around like a dumbass marionette? No. Or being dragged to a hospital and dropped on the ground, or, you know, deal with EMS or providers who are not understanding that I can't help it. You know, if I used to be a hypochondriac, wow, boy cried wolf. Okay, I didn't think I was, but if I was, oh well, this is real though. I really can't control this. And so I spent a lot of time on anti-seizure medication and stuff, and spent an entire year decreasing the amount of meds. One of the medications that I was taking for depression, it took me an entire year to get down off that crap. Sorry, that's not fair. air. That was crap for me. That particular medication was not good for me, and I had no idea how much it was blocking me, how much all of that was blocking me from really listening to my own body tell me what she needed, which was to get off all those meds. Me personally, I'm not suggesting anybody go all on natural with, their medication and stuff, unless you know how to be, an insta healer. I wouldn't be doing that mess. I did that with the careful help of a team of doctors, actually, to get down off of the meds and, see neurology and my general practice and psychiatry, which, like I said, you don't want to work with me, man. I'm out. I'm done. Because in that awakening process, we kind of get to the point where, look, I know what I'm doing in terms of that I'm very solidly aware that, no, I'm not taking any more bull crap anymore. This is real. And if you're not willing to work with me, then there's 8 billion people on the planet, and there's only, 3 other psychiatrists in the area, but that's okay. In the whole state, I'll take my chances and I'll try them. Or I'll start praying real hard and going, what do I need to do with this spirit? And spirit said, lose that, because you're spending an hour driving to an appointment, waiting for an hour to talk 10 minutes with a man that's telling you he's not going to work with you. Lose it. And I did, and prayed more, and switched up things and activities and how I was doing things, and learned a different way. And that's part of the awakening process, is we are learning a different way. We're upgrading. I am anyway. I mean, I'm aware of that's happening to me, and I'm sure that other people are too, because you hear about these common symptoms that people have, that we think we're going completely bonkers. And the people around us, if they're not also simultaneously by chance going through their great awakening, they're going to possibly be going, what are you doing? And why are you doing it? And stop, because it will trigger. I was triggered myself into that by whatever, I don't know. However, once that seizure thing happened, all the rest of like the Claire skills and stuff just started, bam, on fire. And I had, all kinds of issues with trying to regulate all the energy that was coming into me. However, I want to be fair and tell you that my give a shit factor was getting real low, and so was my energy. And, it was like, look, we got to pull this shit out of the fire, because I'm fixing to just not have much left to give to this, and I'm not a quitter. I spent 4.5 months in the hospital with abdominal surgery. I have no belly button. I'm proud to say I have no belly button. You will not see me in a swimsuit. That's able to visualize my non-belly buttonness. Actually, I would, because I don't care. That to me, it's a battle scar at this point. As I made it out 4.5 months on that, then I'm certainly not gonna twerk and die on my kitchen floor. Not willingly. Came very close. It was awful, and I wouldn't want to do it again. And like I said, there isn't anybody that's going to tell me that the brutal way that I arrived where I got from the initial traumatic incident when I was a toddler and all of the others, I'm not going to agree with anybody that tells me that I wasn't protected during that time. That's not true. God didn't let that happen. I don't believe that. That's not my understanding. And I also am not understanding it to be that was a soul contract, that it had to be played out with each individual player that exact way, and that at this specific time in my life, this was going to happen. Awakening is going to happen the minute that the awakened one is ready to be awakened, and not a moment before. And if there's a lot of junk being thrown in the way, or it's being obstructed somehow deliberately by fear of other people that kind of see that light trying to, oh, there's a fire growing in there, and we don't really like that, because it's kind of nice whenever there's a little fire and it's warm and it's toasty and let's go stand next to it. But when that, starts really getting lit up and it gets chaotic looking sometimes, and we don't really want to, no, and whoosh, they're trying to pour water all over you and just douse you, and shut up, be quiet, because we don't want to deal with pain. I mean, I understand. And I don't know what anybody else's stories are that would be non-painful. I haven't heard any. I would love to know that there are people in spirituality land, tarot land, whatever, wherever, that are on that spiritual journey, ascending higher consciousness and consciousness evolution, that there are people who didn't have to go through those kinds of battles. But generally speaking, we have, and it's not to say that anybody who doesn't identify with being a light worker, starseed, or energy healer, that kind of thing, that they have no value, they have no merit, and that they aren't as special, or that they aren't a light worker. Every single person has merit. Every single person has the ability to tune into their own clair skills. You're equipped with all the same equipment I am. I think probably just based on my own understanding, though, is that now, because of what's happened with the awakening process, then I am more readily able to receive all of the most up-to-date information, coding, etc. that I need. The activations, the light codes, the sound healing, the color therapy and healing, whatever it is, whatever modalities, I'm much better able to receive those healings and those upgrades and actually continue to raise my vibration and raise my vibration. So it's quite an interesting process. It really is. And I would encourage you that if you think that you are going through the awakening process, if that's how you're identifying and it's scaring the pants off of you, please don't be surprised to know that you're not alone. I hope that you can be comforted somehow, because it can be quite scary. I mean, it can be quite challenging too, and I don't know how many people just give up, and that's maybe why they go, because it's just nuts to be sitting in that position where, what do you mean I'm kind of psychic now and I can see and hear things? And yeah, you can see and hear things, we're taking you where you need to go. No, I really can't see and hear things anymore like that. I mean, really truly, there's so much chaos in my life. What I was hearing though was my own spirit inside me going, do this. My intuition would say and I'd press forward with it anyway, and then my brain would absolutely crack and break, and I'd be like, hysterical. That was my everyday life as an adult, was just, not coping well with transitioning into adulthood, and not coping well with growing up in a toxic environment where we just didn't understand anything more than dysfunctional family relationships and dynamics. And so, when I went through the divorce process, I lost everything in my life. I lost everything in my life. I don't know what else to say about that. I don't have relationships with anybody in my former life except my children, kinda, and that's strange because it's a process that we all have to be willing to talk about what's going on, and if we're not all willing to talk about honestly and deal with the pain, then we can't really all, sit together. We're not a match. And if we're not a match, there's going to be a spark somewhere. And I don't want to be in those anymore. And I'm not dissing on my, background specifically. I'm just saying anybody that I'm not a match with and it's going to be sparking hard, no, that's a good way to get your butt kicked or feel like you want to get busy kicking somebody else's. And I'm not interested in doing combat with people because it's painful and I don't feel good. And let me tell you about, the assholery that I felt while I was going through that. First year of awakening, year 2 was not fun. I was cranky, mean, not hateful as in doing spiteful things, but just feeling hateful because I felt so out of control and I felt jerked around by an unseen force. And, unfortunately, some of the things that were happening around me were not really helping situation for me. They were actually making it worse. So, but I didn't know how to say, look, this is what I need. This is what I'm going through. I had no clue, none whatsoever. And we're getting ready to come up on 33 minutes. And that's a very long time. So I'm going to close this and say thank you very much for your time. And please, if you care to share your story, please do share your story and let me know how this resonates with you. If it's something that makes sense, if everybody's got a different story. There might be some common themes to what's going on in your world. There may be things that happen in your world that, wow, really, tell me all about it, because we have to have support. We have to have that connectivity and the knowing that we've got other people that aren't going to throw us under the bus. Because we say that we're from, from Lemuria or we're Lyran or something like that, 3333. It's about time for everybody, all Earth citizens to kind of ease up on one another and give each other a minute to breathe and relax and figure out what we are and be okay that if somebody tells you they're an alien, leave them alone. They ain't coming at you wrong, leave them alone. If they're an energy vampire, however, I would certainly be putting up my protective bubble and move out smartly, like you got something some other place to be because you do. Energy vampire will suck you dry and never look back when they're done. And that's not a bad person, that's bad behavior. And bad behavior, unfortunately, lives in people. And so people have to be cut off. When you cut off their bad behavior, sometimes you got to cut the people off too. I mean, you know, there's not any way to really make that happen. So that's that. Now we're going into 34 minutes, 22. So thank you very much for your time. I hope you have a great day, whatever part of the day you're in. And remember, friends, what you need is within. You're divine. It's absolutely fine. Just get on in there and start with telling that part of you how much you appreciate the fact that you're still here and that yes, you indeed do have a job to do. If you think you have a job to do, then you do. If you don't think you have a job to do, then you do. Every single person has merit and value and something they can offer to the earth at this time, or in 10 years, or in 10 million, or 10 lifetimes ago. Every single person has merit. Every single person has merit, and every single person has that God seed potential. How about grow that? And let's get away from growing those other seeds of ew. That's icky. Thank you very much. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you again next time. Bye, friends.